introduction and welcome today. I have the pleasure of presenting Fluoguide for you. Remind me when we did the IPO, it was in May 19 with BIA, and it was a quite nice one. We had 5 crowns per share approximately over units, and now we're trading 80. So we have a quite nice development, and no one says you should stop here, and I want to tell you how we're continuing. So what we do, we make cancer surgery precise, and we help the surgeon to take all cancer out precisely the first time. Disclaimer, and what we do is that we have a drug, FD1, that is reconstituted prior to use. So the doctor will reconstitute it, they will inject it into the patient, and it will circulate and will bind to cancer. Then during surgery, they can switch on the light, and it will kind of light up the cancer, and it means that you can actually see it for themselves, the surgeons. When we say bind to cancer, really what we think of is that it has a special enzyme system the cancer uses to spread into normal tissue. So when the cancer wants to spread into normal tissue, you have to break it down so it can get in, and that is called UPAR. And UPAR system is specifically for cancer, and is sitting particularly in the forefront of cancer, and it means exactly where we want to see it. It also means that it goes for most of the different types of cancer, so more than 80% of patients with cancer will have UPAR extensively expressed. And we could start with a number of different indications. There's 2 indications where the product is approved today. One is bladder cancer, and the other one is aggressive brain cancer. We started out in the aggressive brain cancer because we think the timing is good, and I'll come back to why. But we can go into a range of other indications. We have 2 more studies ongoing in lung and head and neck. So the surgeon, when they see a brain cancer, they have removed the cancer, and then what you see here with the red piece in the middle, they have removed the cancer and they will look into the cavity. And they have to make the decision if they should remove more tissue and get more out of the cavity. And if they do so, they have the risk that the patient will have a disability that, for instance, they cannot speak or cannot see or other functionality the brain is responsible for. Or they have to leave it, and they have the risk that the cancer will regrow after surgery. And that's a very tough decision they have to do on the fly. And what they say, if you ask them, why exactly did you take out that more piece of tissue you take out, often they will say it's a kind of feeling. So it's very hard for them really to make that judgment. And that's what we help them to do. And brain, of course, is particularly an issue because it's a very sensitive organ. Other places, for instance, in the head and neck and the face, is cosmetic issue. You don't want to remove too much of the face if you can avoid it. It could be breast as well. It's also mostly cosmetic. The first product we have is having 3 very unique features. The first one is that it's a peptide that binds to the UPAR, so share the UPAR characteristic, meaning it's specific for cancer. Then the color molecule we bound it to, it's called icy green, the fluorophore, is unique in 3 things. One thing is that all equipment out there is actually capable of seeing icy green, which is the name of it, because it's been an angiographic contrast agent, been around since '59 in the US. So all equipment out there can actually see our product. And that's very important when we think about penetration into the market, that can go much faster. The second thing is that it's a near-infrared light, so you can see it into depth, you can see it deeper into the tissue. And if you remember the cavity from before, what is important for the doctors is that, or the surgeons, that can see down into the tissue. It's not good enough just to see on the surface. And the 2 products that is approved in bladder and brain, they are marking the surface and not really marking into depth of the tissue. That's what the near-infrared light can do. And the last thing is that it's very well tolerated. So, and that's repeated also in our preclinical trials. Before we did the clinical trials. The trials we are ongoing, we have 3 trials ongoing, 1 completed and 1 commencing. The 1 completed is an aggressive brain cancer. We demonstrated the product was well tolerated and that it worked in cancer. We have then 2 more trials, 1 in lung cancer and 1 in head and neck. And they will then show if it will work in head and neck and if it will work in lung cancer. And then we have a last one commencing, which is a more other type of brain cancer, less malignant cancer. And I'll come into the details of it. The first trial, as I mentioned, was a safety trial, and we demonstrated that the product was well tolerated and that it was we have out of 40 patients, only 3 patients reported mild adverse events, so really well tolerated, in line with what we saw with icy green and in line with what we saw with the preclinically. We also demonstrated that it worked with a cross range of different equipment because we are not limited by toxicity, so we can increase the dose. And really what was limited was kind of the light became so much that the equipment could not kind of get blinded. So when you look into the lamp, you get blinded, you cannot see what's around. That's exactly what happened with the equipment, and that was the reason why we have to go to a lower dose. Also, we demonstrated that it could mark cancer very precisely and at least as good as the competitive products. This is a movie we've shown one of the results, and what you see is in the middle, you see the white. The white is the cancer lighting up, and then you see the chopstick-like tools is the surgeon using to remove the cancer with. And you can see kind of the three-dimensionally, you can see into the cancer, and that's of course make the great help for the surgeon if you compare to the image you saw before with the white light, where you see everything is just red basically. So the trials we are ongoing then on following the very good result we have in aggressive brain cancer is a pre-registration trial. So we are comparing it with the product that's approved, and it's 12 patients in each arm. We do the surgery, we switch on the fluorescent light, and we ask the surgeon if they want to remove more tissue. So that is converting that it actually lights up cancer to a benefit to the patient, namely that they get more tissue removed by the surgery. So that's the endpoint that the regulatory agencies appreciate. And that trial would be used to size the phase 3 program, which is commencing next year. They had the lung trials. We have last patient recruited. We just reported that. We have 2 interim results that show that it works in lung cancer. And when we do the trials, as I said before, the first one to say if they actually light up cancer in a given indication, that one we can tick mark. It does light up lung cancer. The next application, the next thing we need to answer is then what kind of benefit can we provide to the patient and how well can we actually provide it. And that is what we will we'll have data coming out in top line result here in first half. We can tell more about that in that reporting. Then we have the head and neck. It also demonstrated already in the interim, and also we did a status that it worked in head and neck cancer, which is the first step. The second step then is what kind of benefit can we provide, and we have ample idea in head and neck cancer. That was why we expanded it, because we can actually in that way we can get reduce the time to the market by addressing questions that will come further down in the clinical development already now. So we expanded it with adding few cohorts, a number of patients to it, so we can get more answer out of the trials. That's a way of getting quicker to the market. Then we have the trial that commencing in all different other brain cancers, and that's because there's 2 things that the neurosurgeon, we have made a huge survey from the neurosurgeons. There are 2 things they're interested in. One thing is that you can see it into the depth, you can see deeper into the tissue, makes a lot of sense. And the other thing is that can use it on all their cancers. And the approved product is just capable of removing some kind of the cancer, not all of them. So this is an upwards trial we do where we look in all brain cancers. And we have in the first trial we did, we have a couple of patients actually with other cancers than brain cancer and also aggressive brain cancer, and we could see that it worked well. I think it's time to go this one. We have a lot of ongoing discussion. We did since day one. We have discussed with the different equipment manufacturers of different kind of partnerships. And different kind of equipment is used for the different type of equipment, for the different type of indications. So we use microscope typically for the brain. The scope is for stomach cancer and lung cancer. And then we use robotic surgery for a broad range of different kind of cancers. We have a lot of interest from the partners, and the reason for that is that it can work already on the equipment as it is. They do not have to change it. They can improve it, but they do not have to change it. And the other thing is that it lights up very much, so they don't have to apply more sensitive measurements on the equipment, which of course I like very much. So we have, of course, discussion going on with a lot of those companies. What we would say is that we do not expect the big check to be written out before the product is approved, typical MedTech-like, but there will be, and there are already some development agreements going on with them where we build in our products into their equipment. So there is an interesting market out there, unfortunately. Many patients get cancer, and about 18 million patients every year get diagnosed with cancer. About 80% of them will have surgery once in their disease, and about half of them have a recur of the cancer afterwards because the surgeon is not getting all cancer out. So there's no doubt, if you make the math, that there's a huge market out there. So it's more a question for us, how do we get in there in a good way, rather than if it's worth for us to do so. Last slide is the 3 important milestones coming up. I mentioned before we have the pre-registration trial in aggressive brain cancer that we use to size the phase 3 trial coming after summer. We have the lung trial top line coming in this first half, Q2. And then we have the head and neck coming in the second half of the year. So we have a stream of trials coming out, and that, of course, will be the next wave of interesting way for us to grow. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Morten, for a nice presentation. You have a lot of trials coming up. What will the key readouts be in the next upcoming months in your trials?
The outcome?
Yeah. What's the key readouts you're expecting?
Yes, as I mentioned before, the question we need to answer first is safe. We already addressed that last summer, so the tick mark from that. Then the next question is, does it work in the given application or the indication? And last summer we showed that it worked in aggressive brain cancer, so that had a tick mark. And now we have the 2 other trials in head and neck and lung to see if they work in head and neck and lung. And we already have the interim result, which will be highly surprised if it does not work in the 2 indication. Then the next question will be, how much benefit can we actually add to the patient, and how should we prove it? And that's what is going on the 2B trial in aggressive brain cancer coming out, and then we have to get it approved. So that's kind of the steps in our development. So 2, will it work in head and neck, will it work in lung, and how much benefit can we do in brain?
Yeah, thank you. And you recently received a grant. What impact will this have on Fluoguide?
Yes, we think it's a very interesting grant. We have so many other things we want to tell about as well, so we have to prioritize. The point is that when you light on some of the color molecules where we use icy green, it will get warm, and when it gets warm, it destroys the cells, or it's bound to. And when we use the UPAR targeting peptide, it will be bound to the cancer cell. So lighting on it, it will actually destroy the cancer cell. And that's a very neat feature for a lot of reasons, because surgeons, when they do the surgery, they actually, in 30% of the time, 1/3, leave cancer behind, because if they take out that cancer, the patient either dies or have severe disability. And with this feature, they can actually light on the tissue, and they can kind of clean the cancer, and they can preserve the function of the brain. So that's, of course, a very neat thing to do. And the important thing for Fluoguide is that will be the next growth booster to Fluoguide in a couple of years when we have launched the first product in guiding surgery. So it's a very important grant. It will go a little bit under the surface, but it will pop up in 5 years' time.
Yeah. What have you learned so far in your trials?
Sorry, if...
What have you learned so far in your trials?
Yes, we have learned a lot. So we have learned an enormous amount of things. One of the things is that the equipment, actually, a lot of the equipment out there are quite generic. It's basically a digital camera that's put on a machinery and then just take images, basically what it is. And a lot of the different equipment manufacturers have a lot of features with the equipment they're not getting in play. Like when you buy a new car, a new computer, you don't use all the features that are there. This is the same with the surgeon. They switch on the bottom and then they start using it. What we can see is that we can bring in a lot of these technical features and actually, together with our product, provide benefit. And that is what is very interesting for the equipment manufacturers, because there's a way of differentiate and actually make their product better than the others. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it works on all equipment we have tested it on so far, which means that we have a very good position that we don't have to change equipment. We can use it as they are. But of course, if they can make a second version of it, it could be even better. So we are very flexible in the whole partnering discussions.
You talked a little bit of partnerships. What are you looking for in a partner? Is it something special you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, we have decided not to go for exclusivity now because when our product can be used in so many indications and it can be used with so much equipment, we do not want to lock ourselves up to any equipment, any indication yet. So what we are doing is that we invite as many of them as possible in and do development work with them, get their equipment tested, and we can do that because they don't have to change it, just put it in. We test it, we see it work, and then we can start a dialogue how we can move on with that. As I mentioned, we don't expect the big check will be written out before commercialization of the product, a typical medtech-like deal, and we expect that we have multiple partnerships.
Yeah. How does the market look like? Do you have any competitors on the market, or are you quite alone with your product?
Well, the market, there's two first-generation product approved, one in brain, one in bladder. And the one in bladder is Fluoguide from Norway. And they have started building the market, and they both have problems that they are not fitted to the equipment. So they have to sell equipment, they have to sell the product, so the penetration takes a long time. Then there are a couple of second-generation products coming in, and there's one approved in ovarian cancer and lung cancer, but not approved yet. So it is a relatively new market, and we are well positioned in the sense that we work with all equipment, and we're specific for cancer, and we can work across the different types of cancers.
Yeah, and why did you amend the head and neck trial?
Yes, that was because, I mean, when we design those studies, the same with lung, the question we have is, does it work in the indication? Does it light up cancer? And then the next question we have is with the benefit, what kind of benefit could we potentially go for, and how valuable are that benefit to prove in the trial? In the head and neck trial, we demonstrated that it worked, and it will be a little bit sad not to try to work on some of the benefit as well, to see if we can actually address them and get ideas for the next trial. So it's a way to get quicker to the market by including more patients in the trial, because we're on the right track.
Yeah, and how are your plans for partnering and commercializations going forward?
And the commercialization, one reason also for choosing the aggressive brain cancer is because it's a relatively small indication, and we can handle it by ourselves if needed. We still want to have a supportive partnership, so we can do it in collaboration with the partners, but we could have some people on the ground there as well. For the larger indication, head and neck, lung, breast, colorectal, we would need to partner it. So having this combination is actually a way where we can get the most out of, let's say, our assets, and we are mostly flexible, and we have less risk of being cornered by the partner discussion, because of course they will also try to get the best deal for them.
Yeah. Have we time for one more? A short one, yeah. When you're looking for a partner, is it before the phase 3 studies, or are you conducting the phase 3 studies by yourself?
We start with partnering already day one. We talk with all the partners in the market, basically, and we keep the good dialogue going. So the kind of partnership we have now is more development partnership, where we get the equipment, we test it, and we have a dialogue on how to move on from here. As mentioned, the big check will not be written out before launch, but we will have multiple partnership. Like a marriage, you start with a kiss, and then you have to go on from there. So that's how it works.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Morten.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you.